At the time I enlisted, the bulk of my knowledge about the United States Marine Corps consisted almost entirely of what I learned from watching the movie Full Metal Jacket. All I knew was that being a Marine meant something. I couldn't explain it, it just felt right. It wasn't until boot camp that I started to find out why that was. Since 1775, when a bunch of drunken hooligans in a Philadelphia bar called Ton Tavern came up with the idea, the U.S. Marines have distinguished themselves in some of the world's most brutal conflicts, from the infamous World War I Battle of Bellewood, where their terrifying appearance during the gas attacks prompted the German soldiers to call them devil dogs, to Guadalcanal, Peleliu, Iwo Jima, Okinawa, the Chosen Reservoir, and countless others that are now ingrained into Marine Corps history. When I enlisted, there was a more recent generation of war stories and heroes that were becoming the new legends. Guys with multiple back-to-back deployments to the Middle East after the War on Terror kicked off. Based on their ribbon stacks, many of them saw combat, and some were witness to the heaviest fighting in Afghanistan and Iraq. With the Iraq veterans, in particular, two places come to mind: Fallujah, and, perhaps even more brutal, the city of Ramadi. From 2004 to 2006, Ramadi would gain a reputation for being the deadliest city in Iraq. Over the course of two major battles against insurgents and dozens of smaller skirmishes, the city would claim the lives of at least 144 U.S. Army soldiers and Marines, with hundreds more wounded. At least 8 British soldiers and an unknown number of allied Iraqis would also be killed in the fighting. Combat vets don't usually brag about what they went through, at least the ones I've met. Maybe they're just wondering how they made it home alive. And in Ramadi, it's no wonder. The constant cyber attacks, IEDs, ambushes, fighting block by block, house by house. How many of us can say that we could handle that? But this is wartime stories, where the stories aren't just about combat, but about the strange things that are seen and heard in places where the ground is stained a dark red color. If you were to ask the men in these following accounts, Ramadi wasn't just teeming with enemy insurgents. It was full of other things. Perhaps a few harmless ghosts, but quite possibly something much worse. This is the Smoke Pit, and these are true stories of strange things in Ramadi. I don't know about you, but I'm getting mad Miami Vice vibes from this place. Police station my ass. More like torture house. This place gives me the creeps, dude. Can you imagine if these walls get dark? This must be the place Saddam's Gestapo has you chained up, before nobody ever hears from you again. Yeah. Those showers were rough. Did you see what was on the walls? Like I said, this is some real sick shit. What the hell was that? The hell if I know. Speaking of walls talking, that sound's coming from the showers, right? Yeah, but it can't. We were just cleared the entire floor. There's nobody back. Well, don't look at me. Ain't no way I'm going back there to check. 3-1, this is 3-2. Over. Flash traffic 3-2. Can we get any rovers sent over to our pause? Over. This first story was sent to me by a Marine veteran under the name of Clay Tom. While serving with the 5th Marines in Ramadi, Clay found his platoon posted up in one of the city's police stations. As it turned out, the station had a dark past, which may have attracted the attention of something Interesting. I was with 1st Battalion, 5th Marines. In 2005, I was in Ramadi, Iraq, on my 3rd tour of duty in the country. During my time, we had to do guard watch over an old Iraqi police station and its jail/holding area. When you enter the main door of the jail, there is what I would describe as a 1970s-looking law enforcement booking office. You have a desk up against the wall, and to the left of the desk was a kind of holding chair with restraints and handcuffs on it. Behind the desks there were about 3 filing cabinets, a water cooler, and on the wall an old corkboard with law enforcement bulletins and updates. So you exit the booking room, hook a right, and there was a long hallway. Everything in this place was painted in that odd industrial 1950s green-blue color. The hallway I mentioned was very long. Well, at least it feels that way looking back. Now, at the very end of this hallway, on the left side, there was a doorway. And through this doorway was a very strange room, with ceilings raised about a foot higher than the hallway outside. Kinda reminded me of the showers you'd see in a gym locker room, but all open concept. But what was really disturbing were the shackles and chains mounted on the walls. And man, the smell of this room. It was that metallic scent of blood. It was so heavy that you could practically taste it in the air. We shined our flashlights toward the drains and saw what looked like dark stains of blood and what I think were hunks of dead skin and hair around the drains and on the shackles. I'm sorry for all the gross details. It's just that I often question if what we saw that night was actually real, so I just wanted to set the stage as much as possible. I think this happened in February or March. Either way, it was early in our deployment, and the nights were a bit cool. That night, I was manning the machine gun at Post Alpha in the police station. It was a 12-hour shift, 1900 to 0700, and I was with another Marine that we'll call Jim. At some point during the night, Jim and I began hearing what sounded like someone yelling in Arabic. Neither of us spoke a word of Arabic, but you didn't have to understand the language to know that this guy was in an incredible amount of pain. You could hear the gargling of his words, like he was choking on his own blood. We were a bit freaked out, so we called for some of our rovers to come over. To our surprise, it was a sergeant and our lieutenant that responded. We told the LT about the screaming, which had been continuous until just moments before the sergeant and LT had arrived. They probably thought at that point we were hearing things, and for at least a moment, I did think I was going crazy. But lo and behold, the screaming started again. I remember our lieutenant actually jumped at the sound and was like, "What the hell was that?" Jim and I told him that that's what we've been hearing. So the lieutenant picked me to go with him and do a sweep of the building. Before the lieutenant and I went into the station, Jim tosses me his Benelli 12-gauge shotgun, which was a far better weapon in close quarters. I double-check it's got a round in the chamber, and off we go. I'm the first one in, flashlight on as we clear the main booking area before making our way down towards this long hallway that leads towards the shower. That's when it happened. As soon as my flashlight hit that doorway leading into the showers, it's like you could feel the air change. It's hard to describe it. It was more than just something you could feel, not like walking into a cold room. I sensed it. It was as if my whole body knew that something was off. The lieutenant was right behind me, and as we moved down this hallway and stack up on the door, I turn around and I look at his face, and I could tell he must be feeling the exact same thing that I am. Of course, I had to lead the way into this shower room since I had the shotgun, so I take a deep breath and make entry. The showers were about 30 feet long by 10 feet wide, kind of this long, narrow room with a high ceiling. I'm sweeping the room with my flashlight on the shotgun, and when I hit the far corner in the back, that's when I see it. 2 large red eyes floating in the dark, at least 8 feet off the ground. All I can remember is that they gave the impression of being dog-like, but just that, a distinct pair of eyes floating in the air toward the back of the showers. That, and I noticed that even though I was shining my flashlight directly at the spot where the eyes were, it was like the light beam couldn't penetrate an area of darkness around the eyes. So, it was like something was there. This solid black mass that was darker than everything around it, but it was pitch dark. And as all of these alarm bells were going off in my brain, I swear I heard it breathe and kind of snort. I felt it too. The room itself was ice cold, and suddenly there was this warm, wet kind of breath hitting us. So everything in me is now screaming, "Get the hell out of here." I have never been so scared. I mutter to the lieutenant that we have to get the hell out of this room. And I hear him start to slowly back toward the door. Didn't say a word, just started backing up. And that's when I knew that clearly he can see this thing too. I start to follow him, and I'm just staring at this thing the whole time, trying not to blink. And almost unconsciously I hear myself start praying to Jesus to protect me. We exit the showers and start moving toward the front of the station to exit the building. He's got one hand on my shoulder, guiding me around obstacles because the whole time I am still facing backwards towards the door that we just came out of to the showers, keeping my shotgun on it. I fully expected that thing to come out and rush us. Thankfully it didn't, and we made it outside the station. When we got out of there and returned to Post Alpha, the lieutenant turned to me with this funny look on his face and he said, "What the hell was that?" I shook my head and I told him I wasn't sure. Well, I thought I knew what it was, but I definitely wasn't about to tell this lieutenant that I thought we had just seen a literal demon. He got quiet for a minute. He seemed to be thinking something over, and then he told me to do something that I thought was kind of strange. He said that I needed to report back and say that the building was clear, and that we weren't able to find the source of the screams. I didn't really see any reason to argue, so I did what he said. I sent up the report. I went back to my position and told Jim what happened. I told him it was probably a good idea to never go into the showers again. As far as I'm concerned, that was an evil place, and that was just my first night on Post Alpha. I never saw that lieutenant again, never got his name. I did ask my staff sergeant about him at one point, and he told me that the lieutenant had been sent back stateside for some kind of family emergency. Not sure what that was about. The longer I stayed at Post Alpha, the more weird stuff seemed to happen. Things you can't explain away, like 200-pound sandbags being thrown around by something we couldn't see. Or the strange black shadow figures that we would see moving around the front gate. So, that wasn't you? Hell, man. I've been here watching the street. What happened? The door slammed shut on its own? Yeah, like, I was just, taking a rest. the back room and the door just slammed shut. Scared the shit out of me. I checked the room and the hall, but I didn't see anybody. Spooky. I don't know, man. Probably just the wind. Yeah, must have been. Good. Feel any wind coming through here? Yeah. No, I don't. I don't know, dude. This place is just off. Maybe it was one of those Iraqi guys. You saw that, right? Huh. Yeah. I think so. What the hell was it? These next two stories were first submitted to Nick Orton's Tales from the Grid Square Project. The first account comes from a soldier in the U.S. Army who found himself conducting Overwatch in Ramadi, a routine post that suddenly became anything but. Ramadi, Iraq, 2005. My team and I were staying in his house to watch the intersections near Saddam's mosque. I was up all day coordinating that night's mission, so by the time we roll in, I'm already pretty exhausted. But when we get into the house, we immediately feel this sense of uneasiness. Something about the place was off, and although nobody said anything, you could tell that we were all a bit uncomfortable. The fact that we saw what appeared to be bodies crammed underneath some large pieces of tile, that didn't help. But we shook it off and set up our positions. I told my ATL, assistant team leader, to take charge while I got some sleep. And then things got really weird. Shit. Sean, is that you? The hell are you doing slamming doors? Sean. God, I swear to God, I've got about 0 patience right now for this bullshit. Sean. Sean, where are you? Hello? Sean? It was about 3 a.m. when the door to my left just slammed shut, which immediately woke me up. I asked my team if anyone came up and went through the rooms, but everyone was where they were supposed to be. I got up to check the door in question, but it was locked. I cleared the room and searched for any signs of intrusion, but as far as I could tell, everything was secure. I shrugged it off, and since there was no getting back to sleep, I took up observation on the stairwell with a buddy. We were on the first landing, with him looking out the window while I was looking down the stairwell. We are in mid-conversation when we both see the same thing. A woman walks across the floor below us. She had long black hair, and except for her hair, she was white, completely white, like her clothing was a very bright white. From us to the bottom of the stairs was about 5 feet, so we both knew what we saw. And still my buddy turns to me and he asks if I just saw the lady in white. And I kind of laughed and said yes. I then tried to debunk the whole thing. It was a windy night, and the palm trees were swaying, but still, none of the palm trees would have made a shadow that looked anything like the woman we saw. But after everything got wrapped up, we ended up going back to Camp Ramadi. I guess news of our spooky experience had already made its way around the platoon, because as soon as we got back to our hooch, everybody's asking us about what we saw. And that's what I told them about this lady in white with long hair. As it turned out, we were not the only ones to experience some creepy shit in that house. Another buddy of mine said that when he was sleeping on a recliner, he felt someone grab his shoulders and pull him back. And when he looked up, he saw a black figure with white eyes staring down at him. What the Arabs would probably have said was something they called a Jinn. He was so scared he ran straight out of the room. Our radio operator bumped into him and asked him what was wrong, and my buddy just played it off, told him that he was stretching. The guys on security who were watching the building's front gates also said that it felt like someone kept brushing up against them from behind. I can't help but think about the bodies we saw buried under broken tiles. Some really terrible things must have happened in that house. One Vic approaching from the west. Looks like a white sedan. And away it goes. Talk about a quiet night. Quiet for Iraq standards anyway. Guys, I'm gonna go take a piss. Now there's something to remember. The time we had to low crawl 10 meters just to take a piss. A Marine buddy once told me that they had 4 guys crammed into a porta-john, all pissing at the same time. Man, leave it to the Marines to make it a competition. Speaking of competition, I bet I've still got the biggest... Ah, shit. What's the matter? You get caught in your zipper? Worse. I think we're compromised. What? How? There's a kid out there. A kid? Yeah. Just came out of nowhere. This next story was submitted by a soldier who at one point was posted on watch on the outskirts of Ramadi. While many of the specters and strange things seen in Iraq involve shadowy figures and inhuman entities, this soldier encountered something much more mystifying. A child that perhaps wasn't really a child. My team and I were doing recon for a big push into Ramadi. We were near that big lake east of the city, south of Fallujah. I can't remember the name. Habaniya. Whatever, it's really big and hard to miss. Anyways, it's nighttime and we're posted up about 700 yards from the highway, observing movements and such. It was quiet, well, about as quiet as Iraq got at the time. So my buddy crawls away to take a piss while the rest of us are keeping an eye out. He was mumbling some joke about his large wang and he suddenly stops. I remember I found it weird, the way he stopped mid-sentence. So I said, "What, you get it caught in your zipper?" I know damn well that our pants are button flies, but I said what I said. He crawls up, he grabs my ankle and whispers, "There's a kid out there." I didn't believe him until I look. And this kid is just standing out there in the moonlight, clear as day. I radio over to my team leader. I think our cover is blown. I tell him what's going on and he's like, "Does he know you're there?" And I'm like, "I don't think so, but he's right on top of us." Team leader says, "Grab the kid and don't let him get away." So we do. The kid didn't put up a fight. It was like he didn't care, or almost like he expected this to happen. He just calmly raised his hands and my buddy patted him down, cleared him, zip-tied him, and walked him to our hide. Our team leader is trying to get the TOC, the Tactical Operations Command, on the line to report the situation. They advised us to get out and exfil, so we started breaking everything down and getting it all packed up. We get ready to start moving, and I'm like, "What about the kid?" TL says, "Bring him." So I grab him and we were off. So we're huffing it as fast as we can toward the lake, which is like a mile or so away. We get about 300 to 400 yards from our original position and take a knee in some palm trees and bushes to make sure we are being followed. The TL decides we're far enough away from our original position, so we're going to cut hard into this big canal that runs right through Ramadi and connects to the lake. He said we could follow the canal straight to the rendezvous and use it as a cover so we can really book it. But when I turned around to grab the kid, he was gone. Just straight up vanished. There was no sign that he was ever there, besides 2 zip ties on the ground. There was no noise, no footprints, and the zip ties were still intact, just laying there on the ground. It was like this kid just literally disappeared into thin air. I know for a fact that 7 other guys saw him, and a few physically interacted with him. None of us imagined this kid. He was there. My battle buddy is pretty shaken up by this. He's got his nods on. He's looking everywhere for this kid. At this point, we were far enough away from our first spot, and it's too dark for anyone out searching for us to actually see us. So we take a few minutes to look for this kid, but there's just no trace of him anywhere. TL calls it, and we get our asses out of there. When we got back to camp, we were talking about what we saw. What really freaked us out was the zip ties still being intact. If the kid wasn't actually there, how the hell did the zip ties get to where we were, let alone still be connected in one piece? I was so close to him that if he tried to wriggle his way out of them, I definitely would have hurt him. As we're talking about this, one of the S2 intel guys overhears us. He walks over and says, "That sounds like a Jinn." And we're all like, "What the hell is a Jinn?" And he says, "You know, the genie from Aladdin, that's a Jinn." Being the smartass as we were, we told him that none of us had rubbed the lamp. At this he shakes his head and he's like, no, that part is bullshit. And then he says, "A Jinn is a wandering spirit. It can be good or bad, but they're around here." When he said this, we just stared at him until someone asked, "So, was this a good one or a bad one?" The S2 just shrugged and said, "Well, you're still alive, so I'd say a good one." Damn, I got chills just thinking about it. To this day, I don't know why it showed itself to us or stuck with us for so long. But I do remember the S2 guy saying that the good ones protect and the bad ones kill, or something along those lines. I'm not much for believing that kind of stuff, but there is something else I can't explain. I don't know what kind of bullet we dodged, literally, but I went that whole tour and never got a scratch. Matter of fact, none of us did. And let me tell you, it got hairy. This was in December '03, things started heating up by February '04, and Ramadi was full-blown crazy by April when the Marines rolled through. But even still, I never took a scratch, not a single one, bullet or otherwise. So who knows? Maybe something was watching out for us.